A good afternoon, our dear viewers. The Youth Roundtable is back, and as usual, bigger and better. We are having an extended edition of Independence, and this afternoon we are going to probe the political contribution of youth for the last 59 years. Many of us have heard that by independence, those who are in the struggle for independence were very young people. In fact, the first Prime Minister, Dr. Obote, by the time he took over the reins, was barely 37 years of age. Of course, later we even saw much young people taking over the leadership of the country in 1986, with some of them, like General Mugisha Muntu, commanding the army at 29. Is it a question of biology? Is it a question of ideology? We shall be hearing that today. But we want to understand, have young people made any sense for the last 49 years? Have they made positive and significant contributions, or as some people say, they have consistently been a disruptive force? Where are they right now? Where is their contribution currently? And where is their contribution into the future? To discuss this topic are people who have been and are still in youth political engagements. And just next to me is the #1 youth leader in the country, Chairperson of the National Youth Council, Mr. Eyeru, making his maiden appearance. We're excited to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mantanda.
Yes, and Julia Muhumza, the gender minister at MUBS, is back after her exams. We hope all went well.
Yes, sure.
Yes, we are happy to have you back on the show. And Julia is running for the vice presidency of the Uganda National Students Association. Hopefully, we shall be hearing about UNSA in a while. We are glad to have been graced with the presence of the Right Honorable Speaker of Kawempe Division, what do we call it? District Council?
It's a republic.
Urban Council?
It's a republic.
It's a republic. No, we want this show to keep running. But Right Honorable Akampurira
Walakira.
Yes, we are. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Yes, I think it's your second appearance. The first one having been on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes, welcome back. And the Executive Director of the Uganda Youth Network. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, comrade.
Yamu Burobuto. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Pleasure is always mine.
Yes, so maybe I will start with you, Jacob, since you are the #1 youth leader in the country. Is there any serious political contribution young people have made in our country thus far?
Thank you, Mantanda, and I want to welcome all those that are viewing us and listening to us. Perhaps this idea of #1, I need to first put it straight. I am the leader of the Youth Council. About #1, that first thing can cause you problems.
Humility.
Yeah, so no, I want to be very clear. But also, I don't know if this number, if by proximity, I can accept that. So thank you for inviting us, and thank you for having this space. I also want to take note that I'm the only one, except for Julia here, I'm the only one who looks young. As you can see, the economic capacity of those coats, it's not what I am.
I'm sure I am. We'll have a good answer for that.
But to the question, I want to say, I think the independence of Africa from the very onset was driven by young people. If you look at Africa at 1955, when the drive for independence actually received enough notice to be something that is continental, to be something that is going to happen inevitably, it was a question of how and which form would it take. It had people that had gotten education from scholarship basis of being the most brilliant in their countries, and then achieving some college, if in the case of Uganda, what we would call the Queen's Scholarship, and were able to go ahead to be in King's College London and so many other of these ridiculously nice at the time institutions. And so young people were at the very center of what we knew to become independent Africa. if you survey, for those that were eventually led, immediate post-independent leaders by people who were a bit older, it was simply a question of delayed struggle. If you look at apartheid South Africa, it was a question of delayed struggle. But even in that delayed struggle, you could see that from the onset, the voices had understood the critical necessity of self-rule, the critical interjection of energy, voices, and wit that only can come with young people were up to the task. And so I think for me, from the onset, and to allow my colleagues to say something about it, I'm going to stop at the onset.
Thank you very much.
Us.
Great
Yes.
discipline there. Uncharacteristic of young people, I'm told.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, that will send me to Yam. You are the executive director of perhaps the largest youth organization in the country. And so that means possibly you believe that young people matter because you're participating in the organizing and mobilizing of young people. You could also cast for us a picture of where you see this.
Thank you, Abubaker. Maybe to be fair to the audience also is that I am just 3 weeks old.
In the office?
In the office of the Executive Director of UYONET, to which by God's grace we hope that we will do a very great contribution to ensure that perhaps even this kind of question does not arise within our times. Maybe to throw in a jibe a little bit, you know what Ndugu Jacob talked about regarding the suits, and one of the issues we are having is youthfulness is not the form, but it can also be the substance. So you don't have, doesn't have to be the way you dress for you to, for you to be youthful or not.
I see you towing the line of His Excellency who says it's about ideology, not biology. So a 75-year-old can be very youthful. Is that the definition you're giving us? Because we're also interested in the definitions, by the way.
Since Jacob says we are dealing with the onset, I hope we shall expound on that within the discussion.
Fair enough.
But without taking much of your time, youthfulness and the way the question is being phrased today, it's as if it's a unique situation of the circumstances today, or it should be unique in a way. All struggles across the world, not just in Africa, not just in Uganda, are energized by a youthful element always. Usually, people confuse the leadership of that participation or contribution with the actual participation, actually. But youthful participation across the world is a given for any fundamental change in any society. So has there been youthful participation and useful at that? Without a doubt. You've ably elaborated some of the key players before our independence, and also the post-1980 elections. These were generally young people at the time. And currently, even now, the ones that have energized our political dispensation are young people. And the National Youth Council structure within our law is not, should not be simply a design. It's informed by serious analysis of its need. How it is utilized is a question that Comrade Jacob and the rest of his team, aided by all of us, will remain to be answered. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. And I'll go to you, Right Honorable Speaker. Jacob and Jotham have actually said youth participation and useful participation is a given. It is there and it's useful. Do you share this view? How does it look like from where you stand?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for having me. Warm greetings to all our viewers. especially from the gallant people of the Republic of Kawempe, and from
We shall do a
the
disclaimer at the end of this show.
and from the young people of the National Unity Platform. Jacob comes from a party that whose leadership is predominantly very old people, and putting on a jacket, just a mere putting on a jacket in that party, it can be such a big threat. So
Yeah, he denounced being number one.
you have to be cautious with aspiration in that party.
Yes.
Yeah, but to our topic, I think that the language in which your question is couched begets an investigation of the progress of our society, first and foremost. Because we must look at our journey as a country from 1962 up to date on various indices, and can look at the economic progress because it is inextricably tied to political participation, and also the extent of cultural liberalization that has taken place during this period. So I choose to break this period into two periods, or sub-periods. The period between 1962 and between 1962 and 2000, because this was predominantly a period of economic struggle and political struggle. And when you look at that, this period is characterized by gross abuse of human rights. There was just, well, to be fair, across the world, human rights during that period were not so much talked about as it is right now, but it was much worse in our case. And in that same period, culturally,
Just for clarity, which period is this we are talking
I'm
about?
talking about between 1962 and
Yes.
2000.
Okay.
That's why we had skyrocketing inflation. That's why we had, many figures being taken off our currency and having a new currency. And culturally speaking, the predominant normal practice was that leadership is for the old people. And as we'll discuss later, the legacy is expressed in the structure of, let's say, LC1 chairpersons. You find that 80% of the chairpersons are over 70 years, and there are very few young people there. And so when we come to the period between 2000 and to date, you see another emerging role or participation of young people. Why? Because there is now steady economic growth, and actually during that period, that's when Uganda significantly cuts its poverty levels. That's a period when Uganda registers one of the fastest economic growth in the world, albeit, of course, starting from a very low point. So talking economically doesn't mean that was doing better than any other economies.
I like how you're sounding today. I'm waiting to hear this is going.
So, I don't know. In my own assessment, I think that our participation and our role is still abysmal because it has, number one, been limited. Young people have not been at the forefront. This is attributable to them as a failure because politically no one gives you space, you fight for it. So when I compare the potential of the young people of Africa and Uganda in particular, and what they have been able to achieve, I have nothing really I don't have polite words, but try to say that it has been close to nothing. But of course, there are some I say you're being unfair, but yeah, that's what it is. It is a bleak picture.
Is this throughout?
Yeah, throughout the period. Well, the period between 2000 and to date is much better than the previous period. If albeit because of passage of time.
Okay.
Because as a human society, we all tend to improve. So this is not a special attribute to the leadership of the time.
Okay, thank you. I have
yeah,
so
let me
many
keep it
questions
there.
for you, but they'll be coming in a while.
Yeah.
Let's now listen to Julia, who I suspect is the youngest. Jacob may protest, but I think she's the youngest on
No,
this panel. Yeah, so Julia, you are aspiring to offer leadership at a very high level in the national students' body. And I was reading somewhere when people are discussing youth organizing and youth participation in this country, the Uganda National Students Association features somewhere very prominently. That maybe speaks to your views or your thoughts or your belief around what young people can do. Yeah, tell us, and now that you have listened to the gallant gentleman, I know you could be forming opinions. Yeah, let's hear from you your own opinion. Do you think there have been any significant contributions? Do you think there can be, and maybe have you formed an opinion on any of the things that, the issues that have come through so far?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity once again. I feel like from all the submissions, at some point, I almost felt like I should have existed many years ago to actually understand what exactly they are talking about. But
Hold on. How old is Julia?
I'm sounding like
You can be sure she's a recent
Are you 40?
She has implicated us.
with a critical analysis, it
Yeah.
doesn't look to be more just like just reading about it.
Yeah.
But yes, personally, I would like to appreciate just like they have mentioned that with the existing structures, it sounds more like a given. And then right from the beginning of the youth actually leading the country into the transformation we are seeing apparently. But again, I think my concern is more of the constructive participation. I'm sounding more recent because I feel like everything else that has happened over the years has been an improvement in their participation. From listening to them, I've had cases where we have the young people actually lead this country into independence, and then later on, these young people they transition to like the old generation, and yet maybe they're still in offices, and then we get to have that gap of the youth actually being in politics directly. But again, the reason I'm stressing that the constructive participation is recently, fine, yes, we have the NYC structures, we have UNSA, we have very many platforms that actually enable the youth to participate directly. We still have a margin of them that are actually not constructively participating in politics. When he talks about the economic liberation, I feel like we have many youth actually playing a role in politics because of the little money they are given. Usually in political seasons, you have organizations that come up to last for like days, and this is where we see actually majority of the youth participating in politics, and yet they last for a very short time. And because the youth being the majority, and then the majority of them are economically not empowered, really does not give them a chance to participate constructively. Fine, we have the people that have the knowledge, have the education about the politics, and they would really want to create impact. But there is a section of the majority that are actually not playing a role. So I believe today's conversation, to me, should be more of the bigger role that the youth can do. Because even right now, when we have a social media in place, there is less to social media that is attached to politics. Fine, we do not expect everyone to be bent on the side of politics, but the youth championing the use of media, and yet we still have issues of limited civic education. We have actually the youth that are not aware of the decision-making processes and all. Then I really feel like the youth are really playing a limited role.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
lately, so far.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, now I get back to you, Chairperson. You did say from the onset, the struggle for independence, young people featured very prominently. And I was just wondering, there are people who have argued that the participation of young people, and I see this coming through from Mr. Akampurira and Julia here, that the participation is sort of you know, by sheer luck or a mistake that, you know, we have found ourselves in this space, and so we are there. And Jotham put a disclaimer that sometimes people confuse the leadership with the participation. In my interpretation, maybe he will clarify, but I think he was trying to actually read into some of the criticisms that may come through. For example, in Uganda, when people argue that, you know, young people are playing a dismal role, and so I would like to throw it back to you in terms of being constructive and in terms of making conscious, meaningful contributions beyond just the participation. Where would you place the role of the young people so far? The participation seems like they have been there, yes, but in terms of making a critical contribution, especially given that we find ourselves in a society that is Geronto, where the old people call the shots because they control the means of production, and they have the money. Where do you place the young people in substance now?
Let me start here. The role of the vibrant in any movement or any cause is very seldom to lead the cause. It is more often to ensure that the cause is sustained, or that if the cause needs excess maneuver, it is their vibrance that provides that maneuver. Those young people that we call uninvolved, unmeaningfully involved, not present, and the old can say are not serious. Those are the engines of the country. I'll give you three senses. Firstly, they give you the most authentic form of necessity in the country by literal radiation of that necessity.
Chair.
when
viewers.
Yes, when young people are unemployed,
Producer.
the easiest way to understand that there are so many young people who are unemployed is that young people will join crime.
Okay.
A high spike in the rate of crime in all urban areas across the country will tell you that those people had nothing to do. That vibrance drives you home on understanding the problem as big as it is. When very many young people are uneducated by a particular age, and that age I'd like to place for purposes of our country at 18, you will tell between 18 and 25 on the voter turnout of that vibrant population, or the sentiment towards the voting exercise. That group naturally radiates or naturally gives off what will be the most authentic view of that society, because they're always busy. And being busy, even if they have nothing to do, they will be busy doing nothing, but you will notice it. And that's when crime falls in, that's when the effects of lack of education fall in, that's when you begin realizing the extent to which HIV/AIDS can go because of lack of awareness, that busy group. And so I want to stick to that first. So for me, even in that sense, young people are critical players of how society is viewed. But the second sense is the demographic sense. The demographic sense, in addition to that reality, that in any community, whether there are few or there are many, you will know that these are the youth by virtue of their characteristic. But in Uganda's case, their demographic sense makes it literally impossible to ignore them. You cannot continue democratically alienating a group of people that in the last election constituted 40% under 30, but constituted up to about 47% up to 35. In the next election, 18 to 30 are going to constitute well over 50%. And so eventually in this country, it's going to be about what the youth think about you. Because for the next 30 years, our population growth curve and projections are simply going up. Our truth and reality is, in the next 2 elections, if the young people definitely don't want you, you can't be president. You can't be anything. You can't be, and God help you that the young people don't agree to push out an age group by virtue of feeling like they are alienated. So for me, that is the second point, that the demographics here cannot suggest that they can't participate. Finally,
I am shocked Teresa has allowed the Jacob allow that point to, fly away.
Finally, the third and final point I want to make on this is that whether you agree that young people are participating or not, you will feel their influence as time goes on. That ties into the vibrance. The second thing is that there can be a time when, yes, they will not be homogeneous in thought, where they don't agree on what is best for them, but they might agree on what is not good for them. I will give you an example.
Except they have never agreed.
No. When we're in Makerere, when we're dealing with issues to do with tuition policy, we didn't check who was NRM or FDC. We didn't check who was DP or something. We just agreed that this alienates a big population of us and does not represent our most authentic self. That level of action is what drives Arab Springs, but the Arab Spring could be claimed to be American. That is what drives people like Stephen Bantu Biko to take students to the street, high school students, to demand for the end of apartheid. Not that they agree on who should be the eventual leader, but they follow the leader that emerges among them, because eventually there is a uniting issue that cuts across beyond the questions of race, of age, beyond the questions of political affiliation. For me, that is not a place that I want the country to reach. I think the country should arrest the young people as early as when they notice that these are vibrant groups and the demographics defeat us, and then create the third situation for how to drive the young energy.
So you have made a case for the involvement and the vibrance of the young people.
Yes.
But it is in that some people argue that young people are basically just an item on the menu of power players, people who are seeking power, be it politically or economically, that the young people are just on their chessboard. And so whereas you're talking about the demographic strength, which are numbers, these numbers seem to be a majority with a minority mentality. Well, and the example of that is the organization you had. That is, the young people are as many and as vibrant as you're saying, and they're the majority, for example. How come they have a special interest group entity? That means they are vulnerable, they are marginal, and they are seeking to regain their power from.
Thank you, moderator. Is that question really for Jacob?
I am going to answer that question, but I want that after I answer, Comrade Harris can come in.
Yes,
because he wants to really listen from me about his.
Don't forget that Jacob is number one.
But here's the thing. Yes. A majority number does not constitute a majority power or a heavier power in political dynamics.
We thought
no. Even in democratic dynamics, a lobbyist group can have way more power than the voting population, if we are to use the corruption of the US disguised as lobbying. If you come here in Africa, a Chinese company that simply wants to offer a road might have more power than the conglomerate of that democratic idea that you have there in avoiding the road because it defeats the intentions here. And so the interest should not be in what the numbers are. The interest should be in what the quality of the leadership of the numbers is.
And that's what I'm inviting you to probe.
That's number two. Yeah. I've now brought it home, so Harris can leave.
Yes.
What I am basically saying is, if this country does not pay attention to that number, then the quality of that number will rise in leadership. That's when you have a problem. When there is no attention paid to a grouping, there is no problem with it being a sidelining. Africa was under slavery or enslavement for over 400 years. And there were kings and there were rulers. But our people were under enslavement. The problem became that the slaves began to have leaders among them that rose up with the understanding of what we needed to change. And that's what gave birth to nation states and republics. There was no consideration for the monarchies which were still powerful to this day. The Kabaka is more powerful than the Baganda, but Bobi Wine has more influence now in Uganda than the Kabaka can ever have, because he will go beyond. The Kabaka will not have listenership beyond the Nile.
The Youth Roundtable may dissociate itself from...
That might be your opinion, but I want to tell you, Walakira will disagree, but Muzukuru wa Kayira will agree.
Moderator, you be sure that I will respond.
So as I conclude this matter,
Yeah.
I want to say, and this is for me also what inspired us to join the youth fraternity, that we have had enough time in this country to mistake the youth number for opportunism, for push, for what we want as political actors at higher level, and forgetting that it is the very youth number in a very small constituency of 27 that liberated the country. Now, in a constituency of over 26%, between 18 and 30, or of over 75% below 30, how can you mistake them not to eventually realize their capacity? If we don't get up to correct this as we are going up, it might arrest us. I'm talking about you, I'm talking about Harris, talking about Jotham. It might arrest us if we continue the status quo of not listening to young people. So we should reach at 40 when the 25-year-old feels the system is okay. Otherwise, we might get into a trouble with the country, which we can't control because of the numbers involved talking to us.
Thank you very much. You may have to come in, Jotham, at this point.
And you will really skip Harris?
And yes, I will get to Harris after Jotham. And the question we are probing here is one of real quality. And if I have listened to him well, he seems to say, for now, it seems like the quality is not yet seen. But he makes a case that very soon, if things continue the way they are, the quality will come through. Some people have argued that special interest group structures like the National Youth Council, and I would say like the Uganda Youth Network, have actually done a disservice in as far as they have gotten you the best brains among the young people in the country and locked you, in a circle of being a special interest group and lobbying for a marginalized group, rather than you taking charge of the reins as we saw earlier on in history, or as should be if demographics are anything to go by. What is your view about this?
Well, I don't know if our profiles are shared by the viewers, but for the benefit of the viewers, so that Abubaker does not misrepresent me, I attempted to run for presidency in 2021. But
trying to run away from this.
But Chairman Vyavakama and his the Electoral Commission up to now have never given me reason why they didn't nominate me. The struggle to find that answer continues. But to one of the issues that we intend to address at UYONET, Uganda Youth Network, hopefully, is to change that kind of perception and that kind of mentality. And you see, just before I comment on some of the issues that came from Jacobs, let me just drive this point home. To join it with Jacob's point, our elite youth, I'm talking about one with a degree or one that has reached university, have done a great disservice to the contribution of the young people in terms of the democratic dispensation in our country.
Seems the elite
our colleagues,
even the older political
complaining about yes, them. And of course, you learn from your elder. So the challenge, like Jacob was saying, is for us to arrest that situation now, so that tomorrow we are not the vestiges saying this kind of things, yet we have seen how this problem develops. So our colleagues that you could say have more humbler backgrounds, but are youth, have really tried to do their part in terms of participation. But they cannot necessarily, due to the disadvantage of opportunity or background, they've not had the exposure that we have enjoyed. Not all of us that have had the exposure certainly will turn out to give quality leadership. But the chances are higher that those that have had that exposure should be the ones to provide that leadership. But we have retreated to our comfort zones in our small offices, in our small rentals, driving our small cars, and seemingly thinking that things are actually fine, because for us we seem to be okay. Now, what Jacob was saying, if we are not careful, those that are here today have been able to reach 65 years, 78 years within that scenario. And I love the way for us, we shall reach only 40, and we won't be able to sustain this kind of situation. So it is our duty to appeal to our fellow colleagues within the constituents that we associate most, those that have had a little bit more advanced exposure, to stop having these discussions in bars and restaurants, but appreciate that there is need for all of us to sacrifice, not just the fellow young person from a more humble background who is fighting on the street, pushing VSJ, pushing Bobby Wine, running to find the signatures of President Museveni, us who can energize the discussion and give the participation quality and substance. We need to wake up, and that's an agenda that we intend to. For places
by
like
saying that, you seem to agree with the assertion that you who can do that have been captured by the crowns.
What I am trying to amplify is that some of us have refused to be captured, but that's not enough. Now that we have the realization that these places capture many of us, and fortunately some of us have refused and have realized that it's important that we let our colleagues know that these are prisons, especially within the moment, looking at the long term. Now, to ride back to it, I don't want to use the word don't agree, but the opportunity.
Here our motto is freedom always. So just shoot.
But I've heard you say many disclaimers already.
Yes, but we let it go.
Yeah, the democracy is about numbers. It is not true that mighty opportunity of number should not be the expression of might. No. Democracy is actually that. Yes, you can discuss the quality of that might or the way the numbers express, but actually that's what it should be. And I think because the practice in our country, it has skewed what it should be, I am starting to get worried that some colleagues have started to have a different opinion of what it should be.
Maybe they are just paying attention to reality. That one person who controls, say, economic power, or controls the gun, for example, can actually more significant than millions.
I was now coming to the reality, but I wanted that to be
okay.
Because you see, you must have an ideal you aspire to, even when you're within a reality. You must have an ideal. So the reality is, until young people synergize around the idea that it's not about pushing this one into power or removing the other into power, we still have a long way to go, because you are beginning with what should be the end. The first, and it's because the leaders of those who seem to lead the participation want to define it that way, because for them they don't have the advantage of time, so they want quick fixes so that they're in those positions or stay in those positions. Now, for me, from my perception, what should be the goal of every young person now is to mobilize around a goal that our population, the numbers, are conscious enough, empowered enough to let whoever seeks or is in authority know that if you don't deliver to the expectations or don't give accountability in terms of service delivery, this constituents of young people, which is a very large number, is not a joking subject. They will bring you to account. Once we achieve that, trust me, you don't have to worry who is there or who is not. Because whoever is there knows that this population of young people has this capacity and also has the capacity and the organization to actually take action when they feel they've been let down. Once we address that, then we can now address who can be there or who cannot be there.
Interesting. Later I'll be pressing you to really show us how that can happen. Is it part of the ideal you're setting, or is it something that can really happen in reality? But
before we get to the, just one minute.
Yes.
Yeah. Before we get to the later, the question has been phrased: the participation of young people. I have not heard anybody who has persuaded me that young people have not participated. But from the discussions, many people are trying to elevate it to or stretch that theme. But if the question is asking, have young people done enough in terms of their participation in our political dispensation, or can they do more?
Yes.
Then I will tell you we can do more, and we can do much more better. Have we done enough? No, we haven't. Have we participated? Yes, we have.
Yeah, one Dr. Ndebes at Makerere says youth are actually being participated. But yes, we are going to take a break. But before we go for that break, there are different points, especially when Jacob was speaking, when you are itching, and you said you'd like to respond. And it seems like Jotham is insisting that this participation, it can do better, but it's doing well.
So no, I didn't say it's doing well. I said we can do more, we can do better. Have we done enough? No. But are we participating?
So when you're doing better and more, it means you're doing good.
No,
you just need to move.
You are not where he wants you to be.
Yes.
Good, but
I don't think he's looking at where you are. Not where you should go.
Good, but not well.
So colleagues, I take this space seriously. So when we have conversations as such, it is important that we locate them. As such, I think it is important for us to have a frame of reference. And that is the advantage of comparing societies. Once we begin to evaluate our participation, then we must define parameters. We must be fair to our viewers and define first and foremost what is political participation, or what is politics to begin with. Because not every young person appreciates what politics is in reality and also in theory. Because these are ideas which have been conceived since the times of Aristotle, Plato, Cicero, and many others. And I like one author who said that governments are aristocracies of knowledge, which means that a society will progress depending on the level of its knowledge, its tower of knowledge, how much knowledge has been passed down from generation to the other. So I want to go to what politics is. What is politics? It's simply about how we want to organize our society and how we want the society's resources to be shared. Who takes what, at what time, when and how. And there is a lot involved there.
I
So
think he means
proper politics speaking is that system of political organization that minimizes conflicts and provides equitable mechanisms of resolving conflicts once they arise. Now, coming to the structure of our politics and how the youth come in, you see historically, and I'm going back to my two periods, you see that, number one, you have domination of the older generation by the young generation.
Who is dominating who?
The older generation is dominating.
Okay.
And like Jacob has rightfully said and emphasized by Comrade Yam, numbers, if these numbers are not empowered, are useless. So it's not enough to say in the last election, the young people were 6.4 million. It's not enough. If they have not attained a certain level of consciousness that binds them across that demographic, it is useless. So what we have failed to do as a generation or as the young people, and unfortunately this is not a stationary group, an age group is transient. 5 years you're a young person, a youth, next 5 years you're not. So meaning that when we talk about participation historically, everyone has participated. So it's about the quality and ways of participation. So specifically speaking for young people who are going to be young or have been young for the last 10 years and will be young for the next 10 years, that's about a space of about 20 years. Or maybe let me narrow it to 10. What binds you together? Because until we find it, then you find a very brilliant young person like Jacob. He's in NRM, that's the ideology he believes in. You have Yam, he's in civil society, maybe he's NRM, maybe he's not. And you have other young people associating with different political organizations. But the question is, why are they spread across these political ideologies, and yet the problems that afflict them are the same? Is it a problem?
Just to correct my brother.
Is it a problem? Yes, please.
I want to invite you to consider that young people in Uganda are not associated with any political party for ideological reasons.
Yeah.
They are associated with party for belonging reasons.
Yeah.
And there is no young person who is mobilized into a party by its ideology in this country. And that is why, just to conclude, that is why, in my opinion, our voting patterns are as they are. That is why, in my opinion, the work on ideology is necessary in every party. Except for people like ANT, who quickly followed what they call an ideological path. But if you asked how many of them understand what they are working towards, you might find only the head. I don't know who it is, but only the head of the young people there might be the one who can.
Yes, thank you, Jacob. So as I conclude,
we are going to take a break.
As I conclude, I must tell you that the ideological talk is for us, the so-called elite. Unfortunately, we are the smallest percentage, not even 1% of the young people, because overwhelmingly the biggest number of young people are illiterate. So what he talks about mobilization into political parties culturally is informed by tribe and which family you're born into, predominantly.
So in effect, you have answered your question of maybe why the young people have same challenges, but they're in different political groupings.
Yeah, but I wanted to distinguish that.
Yes.
That the leaders of the young people, the Jacobs, the Yamurevires,
I am an organizer of young people.
Yes, they are leaders or they are organizer. Very good. By the fact that they have failed, I mean, they have not been able to get young people behind one agenda, means there has been a failure of organization.
Thank you very much. I want to hold it right there and take a short break. But I think we have ended on a very good note where we are having questions of reframing this conversation to set parameters of what direction we can take, but also to probe the failures which have been thrown at your windows. Let's just grab a bottle of water and get back in a minute. Welcome back from the break. Before we went off, the Right Honorable Speaker had thrown very serious questions or challenges to some of the leaders we have here, declaring that the entire generation has failed in leading and organizing. And it's on that point that I'm going to get to you, Julia. You're a minister in a guild government. You're aspiring to offer leadership to the Uganda National Students Association, meaning you represent your institution to the National Students Council. And the Right Honorable is saying that thus far, you have failed. We have failed to organize youth to have meaningful, or you called it constructive, participation. Is that so, and if so, why?
I think there is a section that actually are providing constructive participation, like I said earlier, because you see, the fact that we have already existing structures to enable the youth to participate politically, you will see that most of the youth political figures out there did not just come out of the blue. They could have stood for guild president, then through UNSA, through NYC, and now they are members of parliament.
The analysis is that they are doing a poor job.
Exactly. So even us, most of us, the youth that are actually so passionate about leadership, and we see ourselves as faces of different politics at different levels, we have accepted that there are structures we have to go through. Like that is a status quo. So we know that, in fact, I feel like the problem comes in when the youth, not all of them actually know what is going on. For me to know that Uganda has NYC, that is when I actually became part of the politics at university. So that means there is a section that does not even know there are structures for youth to participate politically.
True.
And they could be out there and just waiting to rally on, okay, who is coming, and then they support, but they do not know that there are actually structures that they can engage in and, in one or the other, contribute to the politics of the country. So I feel like the problem comes in with information dissemination about the existing structures, and two, economic empowerment, like I said earlier, because majority of the youth are locked out and they're only visible in politics of the country when there is something they are getting from it. Of course, Jacob says these are people that play a huge role wherever they are in the status they are in. But it is
that even by not turning up, maybe it's a protest.
Yes, and you see, the good thing is we all accept that this is something that is really it needs attention, like immediate attention, because we need to ensure that the youth have access to this information, they have the civic education, and on top of that, use whatever we can to include them.
Julia, you seem, and you have been consistent on this from the beginning of this show, you seem to want everyone to come to politics. And just before we started this second half, Mr. Yamu Burobuto here was making the point that maybe not everyone has to be a politician. Actually, some people have argued that societies that have their governance structures set out, nobody cares about who is a politician. They are busy in production and engaging in other spheres of life. Maybe that's the case here, that the politics is sorted and so people are doing other things.
No, you would actually find out that most of the people that are actually not participating are the people who are even aware of what exactly is going on. My concern is not on having everyone being political, but having everyone access the information on decision making and the political spaces, and because that way we have an open platform for whoever would participate, regardless of the status and all. But if this information is kept within the structures themselves, then majority of the people who would want to be a part of the leadership would not have the. That's just like I said earlier. When you look at most of the MPs that we admire, from me myself, they started from somewhere. They were groomed through these structures. So how do you expect you as a youth to just come out of the blue and compete with someone who has been going through the structures?
But don't you find it rather disturbing that you're talking about access to information at a time when, one, you're in the information age where people have gadgets, people are on social media. The NRM government boasts of the numbers that have increased exponentially, numbers of radio stations across the country. There is a TV station everywhere. In fact, today, the person who chauffeured me here was saying, there's a TV here, and it seems like there are too many TV stations. And then there are structures, like the National Youth Council, for example, has presence in every village in this country. How then can we talk about people not accessing information with all these?
With all this, when Comrade Yam talks about the fact that a big section of the youth are not the ones that are informed, and later on find themselves actually participating through supporting other people. That is the situation here. We have radio stations, we have TVs, we have media, but even media, as far as civic education is concerned, it's kind of not doing the most, because you will try to follow up on what exactly is going on, and it is just a section of the people that are already in political spaces that actually attach to the information in the political spaces. So if this information can actually go out, and most importantly, these people empowered economically, then we can have to get people make decisions to participate in politics, not seeing it as a source of income or proving their status, but to actually create impact in the society.
So if a young person would rather watch Big Brother than the Youth Roundtable, whose problem is that? And what? Because, I mean, the information is there.
And that is exactly what I said. The people that are having access to the information you're talking about are the land. We who do not want to be engaged. The ones Yam talked about when he said that we know politics is there, but even we choose not to actually go and vote, yet we know we should vote. So there is that section. We have information, we've gone through schools, we're informed about the political decision-making processes. We know what exactly our country is as far as politics is concerned, but we choose to be out of it willingly. But there is a section of the youth that are actually out of it because of how the structures and the systems do not accommodate them to... yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go to the national chairperson. Harris has thrown it at your door that you have failed. I don't know whether you'll also, like Burobuto, who talked about 3 weeks, tell us that, no, I'm just at the beginning of my tenure. But that's fine. You inherited an office, and so you inherit it with the liabilities and assets.
Fair enough.
And yes,
Fair
and
enough.
Harris is saying that you have failed to, if we are talking about meaningful engagement now, you have failed to organize people. And maybe her point that young people, she says she only learned about the National Youth Council only recently. And maybe that actually makes the point that these spaces are not meeting the threshold.
Thank you. I don't know if you want to ask Julia whether she didn't learn about it when I was running.
Yes.
Because I think it was my running that might have brought her attention to the existence that if Jacob takes this matter seriously, there might be something. I'm joking.
Yeah, yes.
But
that's actually a good point.
The facts are actually true. I want to start with Comrade Harris. You see, I don't like to bring personal records, but I think that at this point I need to invoke them because my brother Harris is very important. Harris was the guild president main person. In other words, she was the prime minister of a guild government, the face of government business in Makerere University, which is the face of universities in Uganda. And in many ways, he was in organizational what I would call capacity. I didn't see many things change. I still believe in him, but I don't think that he changed many things in a long sense of how that institution runs. But what I believe I can use to measure whether Harris understood or learned something from there is whether he became more after that. And I think, for me, gladly speaking, he has moved on beyond that, and his organizational capacity is not in question. Whether in that particular assignment he organized anything can be discussed another day.
Does that not?
But I want to compliment that his organizational capacity has been proven in further elections.
So on that point,
Mm.
Julia talked about people as part of weighing the usefulness of youth. She said how people go through these structures and then they are MPs.
Yes.
You are also referring to Harris and you are assessing him beyond the contribution, but the contribution in himself and where he has managed to go.
Yes.
Doesn't that speak to the fact of people saying it's just a few elite who use these structures, you know, to access power and advance their own personal profiles?
I'll say this. When a country is under self-rule, there is no need to have a big mass of people interested in being political leaders, because there is no business in political leadership that will develop the country much more than it is in private sector leadership, in primary production, and so many other steps. This class of people are people who, and I'm pointing this way because Harris brought the point, are people who will talk about so many things on one day and do nothing about each of them. And talk about so many things on the second day, which are totally different from yesterday, commit to so many things and do nothing about them. The people who drive the country to lack of corruption, lack of unemployment, critical skills that we need to have, are people like teachers. If teachers are more political than willed to teach, your education system is dead. The politician needs to be willing to help the teachers, who should be a big majority, and willing to simply teach the nation with passion. Same for doctors, same for engineers. If you have more engineers interested in being MPs than engineering, you have a problem. So the political class of a country, in my opinion, should not be a dominant number. It should simply be a necessary guiding small faction of that society that really can help the country in terms of oversight. But the engine of the country are people that control the aspects that develop the daily lives of people. And it is not my fellow talkers. No, it is people that go down to actualize their speeches. If you have a situation where every permanent secretary, after 5 years of service, because they have amassed enough money, they want to go to parliament. So you have no institutional memory when the next minister is coming in. Then you have to bring in a politician. You're not going to run the country. So I really...
Is that what is happening in Uganda?
No. I am just hypothetically presenting a situation. Analysis shall be for another day.
Okay.
So in that sense, I hope that is clear. But in terms of whether we have failed, I have been in office for 1 year, but there were predecessors. And I can tell you that even in our second quarter of official business, which is in this quarter of 2021-22, we have already noticed that we need to change our approach to engagement. We need to change our face to financing our own programming. How do we approach programming for young people? How do we approach partnerships? We are the apex body, we are mandated by law. But if I come to my brother Yamu Burobuto's UYONET, do I boss them or I make them feel like they have a valid contribution? Even if they call them Uganda Youth Network, but they might only have a youth network of 40 people. For me, I have 600,000 elected. Do I bring and overthrow them in virtue, by virtue of my position? That really is the first step of organization for us. In terms of measuring whether we'll have passed or failed, I think we need to question it along the road. And this is in the honesty that political changes and changing people and organization of communities is not a one-day process. It is not a two-day process. In fact, if you're talking about the whole country, you're talking about years. Because even if you had an immediate change of guard, to feel the effect of that change of guard, yes, there might be executive orders, but for it to settle in, I'll give you an example of the late John Pombe Magufuli. Yes, he came very drastic, but for the changes to begin hitting the ground, we're looking at 3 years. That's when people began now seeing the effect of that change of leadership. Whether I go to apartheid South Africa, they have since changed in their narrative, in their conversations, but to this day, there are places in South Africa where racism is as fresh as you will have the sun of midday. So that really is the process for me.
So in your view, because what you're discussing, you seem to be offering a breath of fresh air into the institution and asking for more time. What has been happening since 1993? You know, yeah, because the body is not new. Is what you're saying an indictment on those who are saying thus far almost nothing has happened?
No. I can say without a shadow of doubt that everyone has added a brick. It's just that the brick is different in size. There are those that brought the brick and realized it was not clay which was ordered, it was a sand brick, and it dissipated. There are those that carried one brick when we needed two, you know. And so everyone adds a different brick.
Are you able to share some of those bricks?
Yes, I can tell you that initially the National Youth Council was created without political representation of political parties because it was created in the movement system. The instigators of the necessity to have the National Youth Council move into representation of the sheds were young people themselves, and then they were aided by the arguments of the Attorney General and so on. When we go into youth-specific programming in the country, whether you're talking about youth livelihood funding or you're talking about the students' loan scheme, the National Youth Council structures and their affiliate friends, the Uganda National Students Association, were the ones who voiced the necessity. It is not that it was only then that there was no need for education to be supported, but it was the realization those ones made. And now I don't have to speak about the necessity. I now have to deal with grander things built on that pedestal. What I am worried about and what I am more concerned about is that in 5 years, we need to do more than we have been doing. That's my position. And the speed of achieving that must be drastic because neither I nor most of the members of my National Executive Committee will be back. So how much we would have done needs to show that we learned from the past. And that's where our effort is. And I can tell you without a shadow of doubt, by mid our term, we'll have done way more than expected of us.
Thank you very much. Yam, by now you should have noticed that what we are doing here is to sort of go institutional. Try to look at the institutions that purport, so to speak, to organize and mobilize young people to meaningfully engage and contribute. We have looked at UNSA and the National Youth Council, and being an executive director of a civil society organization, where civil societies, there are too many in this country, and many of them, their work and programming centers around youth. Some people have argued that these organizations are also just, a cabal of some people who are, tapping into some foreign resources, some of them subversive. And I know, for instance, that the Uganda Youth Network was being funded by an organization that was disbanded recently. I don't know if it has been restored. So why would you go to offer management and leadership to that sector? Is there anything tangible that civil society has contributed to the youth movement that we can speak about and have hope in? And depending on your answer, which one?
Well, you raised my appetite for the question. You delayed to land it.
No, the appetite is lost.
No, it's not. But I hope I do it justice. I felt I wanted to do it as you started it, and Ndugu Harris here gave me a very curious glance. Yeah, but to begin it off from where Harris ended it before the break, I seem to think that Ndugu Abubaker, you're under the impression that Harris threw the question to either me or Jacob, but certainly he's a youth.
Thank you very much.
And he's a speaker of Kawempe Division, what he calls the Republic. So it's not, I'm sure he shares the burden of that analysis, which is spot on, by the way. The relativity of it can be debated, but I believe it's spot on. Now, the Baganda have a saying that atamukute yagamba yaye.
Sambe.
Yeah, so the critiques of civil society, many of them could have genuine points from the level of information they have or they don't have, you know, and usually the one that is missed is they don't have. So, but to be fair to them also, there is more that can be done by our civil society. There is some that has been achieved, and to use Jacob's explanation of the institution that is now providing leadership, you bring 3 bricks, maybe they need 10, you bring a different quality, and then as you take it back, you know. So it's a try and achieve or and error situation. But why we are starting to have a lot of focus on civil society, you should ask yourself why. And the criticism has come in a lot of late. And you know, for these friends that belong in political parties, they must ask themselves why. Because it could also be a pointer to the failure of our political parties to organize the population. Civil society is supposed to support,
yes,
you know, political engagement, you know, not necessarily lead. Of course, certain situations might need civil society to raise the engagement a little bit, a notch higher, and perhaps take on the leadership through activism and that kind of. But ideally, it should simply be a support base for both government and even the other friends of government on the opposition in terms of their engagement and progress of society. Now, so the political parties also need to ask themselves, why do people seem to now start asking civil society so many questions? Maybe they've given up. Now they are saying, okay,
yeah,
the next
the
person
alternative?
is civil society. So there is a lot of pressure on civil society to deliver. Also, your question should also can be seen from very many angles. Why is government clamping or progressively shrinking that civic engagement space? That also should give you some bit of inquisitiveness and should tell you perhaps the role that society could be playing. And I'm not in any way, I hope that and I'm not in any way condoning civil society organizations that could be operating outside the confines of the law. But there is clear evidence that some are really being witch hunted by government, and you must ask yourself why. That, I think, will be a discussion of another day.
No, but we're actually interested in hearing.
Yes,
why
and
you think so.
because
and some had evidence.
you know, one of the comrades said that one of the comrades on this panel learned about NYC institution because they were running. I'm sure today that perhaps civic space will have very many other viewers, perhaps because of Ndugu Harris being on this panel. So this is a contribution that many who want big achievements without putting in the effort and the time fail to see. What am I saying? The discussion that is happening here is being aided by a civil society organization. And by no means, I am sure it is, take it or leave it, it has a contribution it makes on our political participation and perhaps growth. So there is somebody out there who is going to benefit from this discussion. And sometimes you need only one person to be alert and can change things around in society. So these are some of the small things which I consider big that the many critics of society there don't actually see. And this is one of the simply the examples I've given you here. The NYC is having engagements with Siatini or discussing the status of the youth and things like that. Very many youth civil society organizations are partnering with them to aid them in leadership training, mentorship, delivery on their follow-up on service delivery by different sectors. So you're saying that Jacob and his team are not better by those engagements, really? So there is a contribution. The problem is that, and this is where I want to get to the other point, I hurry to ask, what is the priority for our current situation for political players or governance players in different sectors? Is it economic empowerment or their governance issues? What is the essence of being economically empowered for an explosion later? Isn't it perhaps better to ensure that the governance issues are in a way reasonably arranged to facilitate a sustainable economic empowerment, even if it comes later? So I know that very few might understand that question, but I am banking on those few to hear me. So these are some of the discussions that, until you have consensus and a genuine agreement on, you can have a more solid and a bigger contribution that very people out there would want to see civil society.
So there is something disturbing
Back to
me
my...
here. You and Jacob are sounding very modest and humble and using statements like bricks, like small contribution. This language,
May I come in
historically, this language historically is not a language associated with youth. Youth are known to, break barriers, radicalism, high ambitions, being idea. But you're sounding like elders, and so because I know if I asked the president of Uganda to account for the past 36 or so years, he may be sounding like this, saying we have made a contribution, we are not where we are supposed to be.
Yeah.
But this language that usually comes from senior people.
Beck, I have a problem with you taking long to learn.
Yes, okay.
And taking the sting out of me.
I think that I underestimate how quickly you can get to my question if I even learn.
Yeah, perhaps. Yes. But what has it achieved?
I want to serve the moderator.
What has it achieved?
Comrade should not try to moderate.
What has that kind of character achieved?
Well, you yourself said youth have been the engine at the center.
Yeah, and I've also told you that we have failed to achieve what should be the goal, and I've also told you that we could have done better. Maybe there is need in changing the approach on how we address and look at these issues. So better to try a new method than keep insisting on the one you have tried and realize it doesn't work. Better to try one you've not tried and fail at it also, and perhaps look for another, than keep insisting on one that has not.
I'm going to Harris, but
that has
I
not.
actually want to say.
So just to finish the other point.
Yes.
Just for the information of the people.
Yes.
Because Jacob talked about our capacity as Uganda Youth Network. I have been presented an institution that has 27 networks affiliated to it from across the country, youth organization networks, and 157 youth organization members affiliated to it. I will be going to the ground to ascertain this report that I have gotten.
Yes.
That by no means is no way comparable to what the structure of number one.
Yes. Yes, you just invited us to be modest, but in 30 seconds,
even less, I wanted to say that people should not mistake the modesty of those that speak on behalf of the many to be the modesty with which they would react.
Yes.
Or
even work.
If the peace talks fail. You'll just simply ask Amin about Nyerere. He was doing all he wanted until he decided that Uganda needed to expand southward into the land of the most modest African. When the war started, it ended when Amin was in Saudi Arabia. I thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there are too many points.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And I think that clearly opinions are being formed. And in their formation, I am increasingly getting worried about who my colleagues are becoming, about what my colleagues are becoming. Their choice to become politically correct at such a tender age is worrisome. And their choice to speak about what I would call non-negotiables, what I would call the unacceptables, and you speak about them rather in, polite language, not to offend, is rather worrying for our generation. Comrade Eyeru Jacob, and let me first make a disclaimer. When we are analyzing such issues, we're not really evaluating the performance of any individual. We're really evaluating the youth participation generally, where myself I might be inclusive. So, and also understand that social change is painstakingly slow as a result of what we call social inertia. That's a political term, I think, from political science. But my point is, Jacob is a chairperson of National Youth Council. My good sister here is aspiring to be the vice president of Uganda National Students Association, UNSA. With due respect, both defunct associations, to the extent that they cannot criticize the sitting government. If it is about doing work that is akin to civil society work, they are okay. But, and I'll try to clarify my point by giving just one example. In the recently concluded election, which by my evaluation and according to many writers' standards was the most violent election in the history of Uganda, many people were killed, young people. Many of them are still incarcerated up to date in various prisons, some official detention centers, others illegal detention centers. And this report is out there. It's very clear that many young people have never been produced in court for over 10 months now. It's very clear, it's outside that this is not about any UP opposition, it's not about anyone. These reports are there. I have never heard any youth MP or any leader of the National Youth Council or any leader of UNSA, because some of them are students or some of them are of age going, they're of the school going age. I've never had anyone come out and say our colleagues have been incarcerated illegally and are not being produced in court. We demand for their rights to be heard. They are protected under the Constitution. He will not do that. Just a moment. UNSA will not do that. At least for the last 10 years, I have been politically active. I know the UNSA, whose patron is the president. I have never seen a press conference about that. But if it is a press conference about mathematical sets, a good cause of action. If it is a press conference about pads, which is good, I don't despise it. But politically, not threatening. That is okay, it will be allowed. But useful movements, youth institutions like UNSA, should be at the pinnacle of mobilization, political mobilization. Political mobilization towards moving the country towards constitutional order. And Jacob, and I hope my sister gets there, I know and I trust and I'm confident are capable of such analysis. That these actions by the government are not at par with our constitutional requirements, but they will keep quiet. Lest Jacob will lose the chairpersonship. So Jacob clearly fits in my analysis of preference falsification. He's a preference falsifier. Who is a preference falsifier? Preference falsifier is that person who, after a proper analysis, realizes that one decision is wrong, but he chooses the other because the other, although wrong, has some benefits. There might be benefits of convenience, there might be benefits of fitting in, not going against the established order, there might be benefits economic in nature. Albeit, there will be benefits and he will choose, he will disregard the most logical conclusion and he will go with the most illogical. It's common. I will give you examples of Andrew Mwena. We have so many people who, after such analysis, will go with the wrong one. And then they will come to those who have chosen to go with the least likely, the one which conflicts with the established status quo. Like I'll give the example of NUP, where it has been branded an organization of hooligans. And Jacob will refuse to join NUP against the status quo because he says, no, Harris, that association is of hooligans. But I tell Jacob, if it is of hooligans, why don't you bring your character and give it the perspective or the image you would like to see? Because at least there is a formation that is towards bringing the country towards the constitutional order. If you're an economist and you're arguing that people in NUP don't know fiscal policy, or people in NUP don't have alternative agenda, but you know at least they are a formation against what we all know is a bad governance environment, why don't you bring your economic analysis? Why don't you bring your political, political analysis and give NUP that character? Because as a political party or NET, these are open spaces for everyone to join. They will not do that. Jacob will not do that. Andrew Mwenda will not do that. And for the case of Andrew Mwenda, he's on record saying that if General Mugisha Muntu forms a political organization, I will join him. That's him trying to convince his mind because he has chosen an illogical option. So he must justify it because there's what we call cognitive dissonance, where your conscience tells you this, but your actions depart from your conscience. So you must, by all means, lest you run mad, justify, convince your mind that your actions are in tandem with your actions.
Read disclaimer.
So Andrew Mwenda goes on television and tells you people, no, those guys are bad. They are bad options. They are worse than President Museveni. Then another option is talking about comes and still with Museveni. So it's because of economic benefit or other benefits, simple and clear. So that is our problem.
Yes.
And this brings me
and Jacob,
he will have his time to react. And this is not about Jacob per se. So our problem, not even about Andrew Mwenda. I don't think that this space can be reduced to any individual. These are just mere instances of distortions in our society.
True.
So I think that as a young people, because of a long history of deprivation, of poverty, of lack, of struggle. And I always give this example on television, as in Germany. And,
welcome back.
Listen a bit. So, I when you're taking your first trip abroad, you're full of this excitement. I know I was doing well.
German.
Even by the standards of Uganda, I know that I was doing well, but this is not very, very far from today. And a young lady looked at me and was like, "Oh, Harris, what's up? You looks like you've been struggling for long." Like, wait a minute. How did she know? Is this some kind of an oracle or what? But the point is that we are a depressed society.
But how did she know your name?
Because because this was after the conversation. It was not that just on the onset she said Harris.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's wondering if you asked her, how did she know?
Yeah, because this body has a memory. Someone can look at you and know that you're stressed. But because we are from the same society, we won't observe ourselves.
Yeah, we are all.
because we are all stressed. That is the norm. But someone who is from the other society has a comparative advantage. Yeah, so
We
she's
need a laugh break.
yes, so we all stress. Because among my peers, I thought I was doing well. And then I was like, wait a moment, this is true where I'm coming from. The society is a poor society. So because we are a poor society, we let go of certain standards.
No,
We
but
stop law.
Abubaker, just to so that I aid his
Okay,
point.
though he's about to land.
It doesn't,
Yeah.
because that lady said you were stressed, you decided to believe it?
Yes, but not stress.
Because
Stress actually is temporary.
because
Stress is
also
an expression of depression. But I can assure you, if we had social or anthropological studies, you realize that our society, the biggest percentage of our society is depressed.
Yeah.
yeah, we
But
were
we
ranked
want to
number
not
8
see it
actually.
Because all of us are stressed.
Mental
And
disorders.
you won't witness it because you are not observing yourself.
Yeah.
But to an external observer, he will not see it. I'm thankful that she was honest enough to tell me that. And so the point is, because of that long history of poverty, deprivation, we are choosing the least beneficial options. We are choosing comfort over political struggles for liberation, struggles that would lead to the common good. Because let me tell you, all we need is a good governance environment where business can thrive, where there is ease of doing business, where everyone has a right, where every right is guaranteed, whether you are a dissident, whether you are a supporter of the regime at B, it doesn't matter. All people need is that, am I safe? Can I speak and go to sleep? Will I go to polls and my vote matters? If I work hard, will I succeed? Or the appointment will be incumbent on the strength or the size of my nose, or who I know in government. So that's unfairness in opportunity, access to opportunity, the unfairness in so many aspects of our life. Who controls the resources is what people would like to get rid of. And as a young people, our role must be towards contribution to that. So if since 1962 we have never established such kind of an operating environment, then that means our contribution has been abysmal. And I will stop at that.
Thank
for
you
a
very
moment.
much. At that point, you have sort of answered a philosophical question that Yam posed. And you're saying, seek ye the political kingdom first, others will follow. And he actually threw in that question. But before I take leave from you and go to the chairperson, you talked about NOP and People Power Movement, and I actually intended to ask you this question. Some people have argued that the participation of young people in the previous election was higher than ever before in our history. And some people credit this to the People Power Movement. Well, when we look at the results, they don't seem to reflect that participation, at least in terms of age. And so I wanted to pick from you, since you come from the National Unity Platform and the People Power Movement, to just do for us an analysis of what you think has been the contribution of NOP and the People Power Movement.
Yeah, but let me just
to
make
young
a
people
disclaimer.
participating. Yes.
Because I think sometimes you people in the civil society and sometimes people in the academia and political pundits generally, they go and look at the statistics by the Electoral Commission and they try to look for patterns. But this is a manufactured document. at least from our perspective, we don't agree with the results. And we have our evidence.
On
And
your
I've
own
already said
facts.
that we have our evidence. Yeah, that's debatable. But
What
at
is
least,
the facts, or that they are your own?
no, the fact that this is the evidence
Okay.
we would like to show the world is not debatable. But it is also not debatable that what is displayed by the Electoral Commission, apart from the constitutional mandate that they will be the official, that the result will be official, is also debatable.
Okay.
So now on to your question, I can tell you that what His Excellency Bob Wine and the NUP political party has done is that it has given a certain constituency of young people, those who traditionally would not have a right to participate in politics. These are especially young people from the ghettos of Kawempe, ghettos of Machindi, and many ghettos around the country. And I cannot tell you, I had opportunity to move around the country. And every corner of the country, you would find young person who would identify with my classification. And that shows you the inequality in our country and the legacy of our social norms and our cultural values and the long spells of discrimination. That if you and I and Yam, all of us on this panel, are lucky to come to have an education up to university, will enjoy a certain class of privileges, which are totally out of reach for the biggest percentage of young people. Now, politics being that it is about who gets what, many young people have sort of gotten a breakthrough. I've seen many young people with dreadlocks run. These would be ordinarily discriminated against. Bob Wine, from his background, he would ordinarily be discriminated against. But that kind of, those kinds of cultural barriers, those traditional perceptions about, families where the leader should come from, the conversions. I like, for example, what Council Semakad is doing, trying to make those beliefs and values that really don't serve us, but are discriminatory and are intended to entrench the patriarchal structure. Bob Wine and the NUP movement have broken that. And I can assure you there is a belief by many of those young people that indeed they can fight and work so hard and come out of that situation, and they also rise from the ghetto, go to parliament, and if parliament doesn't come to the ghetto, they will take the ghetto to parliament, and now the aspiration is that the president has refused to come to the ghetto, and they will now take the ghetto to the president.
Maybe that explains why the Jacobs of this world cannot join, because from your description, it seems like...
Yeah, because you see, when you are the power holder, power comes with benefits. Jacob, in his position of privilege, or his association with those in position of privilege, wouldn't want to lose that privilege. Because what we are struggling for in the NUP is to spread power across the society. Those in the NRM, and it's a small class, government in Uganda, and I've consistently defined it as a small group of people who have come together to eat on behalf of others. So that small group enjoys benefits, and they don't want to lose these benefits.
Maybe one final one. You did say you have discredited the results from the Electoral Commission, and I'm just thinking the viewer may be wondering. Some time back, some political formations formed a pressure group called the People's Front for Transition.
Yes.
And some of the comments that have come from your party suggest that there is a feeling of entitlement, and it gets rooted in the saying that we have the majority in parliament. We are the official opposition front, which is, according to what the Electoral Commission announced. Is that not a case of, preference falsifying?
Cherry picking.
Yes, cherry picking, and you accept them when they serve you conveniently. When you are appointing committees in parliament, for example, and then you reject it when it does not work for you.
Yeah,
Maybe
thank you so
also,
much. And I will use only just 1 minute
Yes.
to answer this question,
Yes.
to be fair to colleagues. No, His Excellency Kyagulanyi has said that there is no benefit in the prisoners fighting against each other. Everyone in the opposition who is genuinely in opposition is a prisoner. So the fight amongst prisoners is useless.
Some prisoners are playing Champions League.
So from our perspective, if I can use an allegory of an elephant, if you want to remove an elephant from the room and one is holding it by the trunk, another one by the tail, another one by the leg, I think you're all trying to remove an elephant. You don't necessarily have to touch the same part of the elephant to remove it from the room. So in the opposition, we may have different strategies, but provided that these strategies are congruent in the common purpose, I don't think there is no contradiction in that.
Yeah, but when you say some players are Cristiano Ronaldo and others are not, and some people, and this, okay, for clarity, there's a statement that came from your deputy spokesperson.
Yeah.
And we are saying some people, even in cups, there's Champions League, there's Premier League, there's curling. So you cannot expect us not to focus on Champions League, to go to curling cup. Should we say this is not, this was a personal statement? It's not.
To be fair, you know, well, words by a deputy spokesperson, if any member of the public takes them to be official, they are not wrong. But some statements may not really represent the institution. I don't understand the context. I haven't had the opportunity to listen to these words. I don't know the context in which he was saying them. Maybe I would be in a better position to respond to this question after I've carefully studied.
Thank you very much.
And maybe, Abubaker, maybe if that is not modesty, then I don't know what modesty is.
Yes, thank you, the viewers. We always have the court of public opinion as its final say. But that's going to take me to you, Jacob, and I know there are a couple of things that you have to respond to. And I also know we are moving towards the end of this show. But maybe I should just let you respond. Lest I delay you like I've been delaying.
I want to start with my brother. Yes. When you said His Excellency Bobby Wine, you are addressing him as president of what?
Of Uganda.
Okay. This, in addition to saying if the parliament does not go to the ghetto will come to parliament, is the picture my brother wants us to accept. That after we have gone all the way through our modesty of education, as bad as it is, UPE, USE, maybe by the grace of God joined institutions like Eyeru, Makerere, MUBS, Chambogo, we should now get out and accept that the people whose lives have been about what to eat tomorrow should legislate for us, because we have failed to deal with the problem of not reaching them. I think that that approach is literally to say you don't care about the country. It means that for you, the person who is qualified to be at the front line of leading the country can be disqualified by virtue of his poor performance. You cannot say that, and I'm saying this very painfully, you cannot say that because a doctor is doing their role poorly, therefore let's bring the engineer to treat people. No, it's not how it works.
That's extreme.
And that's what you're doing. Because you don't see it, it is convenient because it wins you votes.
If you assume that parliament works, you properly argue that let's send there people capable of proper analysis. But if you're under the belief that parliament is just another institution for rubber stamping, then it doesn't matter who goes there.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, let him.
Well, fair enough. I don't want to drag this. I think we'll have enough time.
Exactly.
But I can tell you that logic I will never buy it. That because Nyerere has failed to lead in Tanzania to the expectation of the people, therefore the leader can come from the streets of Dodoma. No, I don't agree. I think that in every instance, there are Nyereres, there are Musevenis, there are people at the rank of Dr. Apollo Milton Obote, people at the rank of Matthias Mpuga, who can rise up when Matthias fails. I don't think. No. I am insisting because I'm insisting because for me, it looks like it's manageable for you now. One of the biggest problems we've had, and I was watching an interview this morning of the leader of the National Unity Platform, saying, I don't control what people say online. But you made politics about what we say online. When you go as far as making people realize they have power over everything, you lose the moral and the social construction of society into a non-existent construction. When you lose social order in society, you will end up in a situation where the person who is supposed to be driving the bus is conducting, and the person who has a skill to conduct is now driving the bus. That bus, I can assure you, may arrive, but it might not arrive at the destination you intended when you are leaving.
But
and I hope I've made that point.
To be fair, to balance, because you would want to ask Jacob, in the overall, who has been charged with ensuring that we didn't get there?
Exactly. Thank you. And I think I've already made the point. My brother, I think, was still thinking about the stories my brother here brought. But what I started with that in the failure of Parliament to execute their mandate, which is what Comrade Yamu Burobuto is talking about, you are agreeing that there is a problem. And I agree that the problem is the ghettos have developed by the inability or in the inaction of government. That does not constitute the fact that the ghettos should become the government. That is what I am saying. I am not disabusing ourselves of the challenge.
For those in government, yes, but for those who are affected by the ghettos, who live in the ghettos, no.
Yeah, I have grown up in a ghetto, and I'm saying it because I have been there. I know what it means for that Munyaye boy to think he can be the LOC1 chairman of that place. But I will leave it to that.
So you were
the second, the second point I want to make, and I want to also lay this to bed. Comrade Harris here called out Jacobs eventually, but my name appeared so frequently that I wondered whether all boys have the name Jacob or chairpersons and leaders. I am sure he veiled it at the end, but the point had been made as enough times as he attempted to cover with the name Mwenda. The aspect of who is arrested for what interest and so on is not my business. My business is on who is persecuted for being young. That is my business. Comrade Harris here is castigating me and a couple of other leaders, and even castigating a young woman who has not got into office for not speaking out.
I don't think she felt the same, because you're extending my
I can only cover her. I can only.
You're trying to mobilize members of the panel to support you, but that's not what I
said. Okay. Castigating me and leaders that fall within the Jacobs.
Yeah.
For not acting on the arrest and incarceration of who? NUP leaders. I have had what I call the privilege of being to Luzira. There are young people in Luzira, you will never miss it, who are there, charged but never produced in court, remanded but never brought for mention. They are there on account, they have been brought for mention but never brought to court for the first time. They have been there for so long, and for crimes as petty as being idle and disorderly, and they don't have a voice in these people's establishment. When these people start talking, they identify first comrades of not the struggle, but their struggle. Because even the FDC has political prisoners. They don't identify with those. I will give you another very subtle but true blow.
Probe that, because
we can probe it all day. True to my word.
Bring that example.
Today, comrade, not comrade definitely, but their leader, Bobby Wine, appeared for a press discussion, and he had a T-shirt. There are two of parliamentarians that are incarcerated, but the T-shirt had only the face of one. In his interview, after visiting them, he said one of them is not very bad, but this one is so bad. It appears like for you, there is a specific interest in cherry picking whom we serve and whom we don't serve.
So, Chair, does their cherry picking justify your
my silence?
So, yeah.
First of all, we have not had silence on the matter of how young people are treated. But our silence or the lack of silence is based on the conglomerate of young people. Secondly, it's also based on the principles of justice.
So you're saying there is action to help young people?
Yes, but it is not the nature they want.
Yeah, okay.
It's not the nature I want.
Can you give
the
us,
nature
can
you
you
want,
give us an example of the nature you prefer?
or if you check
how you've spoken up.
Or if you check, or if
yes.
you check the internet, you'll find
Oh,
that
really?
immediately after the riots of November, we held a press conference.
2001.
No, 2020, my brother.
Last year.
Okay.
We held a press conference. Beyond that, we wrote to duty bearers
November
about
is
the
next
matter.
month
But to even go beyond that, we have held positions that are uncomfortable from government. We have a different position on opening of schools. We have voiced it. It's just that you don't watch such media. You want to watch media which is showing you that the person who is locked up is of noob. That is perhaps your interest. But finally, my brother, I want to say to that matter, if we are going to deal with matters of justice, you present a better case to Uganda to say, for very long, we have a list of so many political prisoners, and analyze the matter of political incarceration as a national matter, not as a NUP matter. The moment it keeps having a face of NUPism, even FDC does not join the charade. No wonder.
So the NUP supporters are not Ugandans.
They are, but
so
they are cherry-picked in your speech.
Why wouldn't you defend NUP supporters?
Oh, I think I've realized my error. Yeah. I was hoping that I'm speaking to people aspiring to lead the whole country. They must be aspiring to lead the NUP
in this case,
in the country.
In this case, moderator.
Yes.
In this case, overwhelmingly people who are affected are NUP.
No.
And as the chairperson, National Youth Council, he says he can't speak for them because not everyone is affected.
No, I think
really
that
reasonable?
No. Yeah. My position is that when I speak for everyone, and they are in everyone.
And maybe the question is,
his
have
insistence,
you done that? You've said
yes, and I've said yes, but
okay.
His insistence is that I should have the word NUP in my speaking, and I'm saying I'm not cherry picking on the issues of Uganda. But he also seems to feel that they are overwhelmingly the majority in prisons. That statistic has never been presented. It is not true, but I can give him the benefit of doubt that in the NUP country,
yes,
it is definitely
so
the
thank
majority.
You seem to have a last point.
My last point now is to call out my brothers. We are building a country. We are not building single mindset countries or mindset people. We are building a country. A country will always have divergence among its people. You will never have a homogeneous mind among even 3 members of a gathering. In that sense, it is better to find what accommodates all of us than to find what accommodates you and pushes you forward as an institution. And I agree that, yes, there might be ills presented to them, but when has politics not been about ills? Kenya is going through a process now of choosing the next president. If DP Ruto was to speak about the ills that are being meted on him or targeting him as the focus of his campaign, the country might never come back together.
Is that to say that's okay and
acceptable? Exactly. And now that is to say that leaders must have a bigger role in society of stitching that society in its heterogeneous nature together, much more than in dividing it along the lines that fit their shoe size.
Jacob,
like NUP wants to take.
Jacob, just one point.
Yes,
I don't think if Jacob and many other people who think like him were on the receiving end of this brutality, he would urge like that.
Harris, I almost lost my hand in my first year on the brutality of police. But I would like to tell you again, and I want to encourage you, avoid politics of emotion. Politics should not be for emotional reasons. It should be for reasons of where society needs to go and not what you feel as an individual within that society.
Thank you very much. I'm enjoying this back and forth, but I fear our time is fast spent. So you're going to allow me hear from Julia for a few minutes, and then we have our concluding remarks. But, you know, the Right Honorable threw some fire in your direction, saying that as student leaders, let's say so,
said I was extending it.
We have not had your voice on some of the issues in society, and he cited an example that you seem to be focusing on only seemingly neutral challenges like PADS and others, ignoring fundamental governance issues, and in his view, governance is at the center of everything else, including maybe the PADS.
I think you bent it more on the side of UNSA, and I'm not better placed to really.
I put it to you that you serve in a good government, and a good government is an organ of UNSA.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. But I really think there is a distinction between the principles of justice and even as we exercise our leadership in different capacity. And I think Jacob did justice to that angle of the question. But all I can say is I have an instance that happened to me. I don't think going against the laws or the judicial systems has like an exception. I was running on the NRM ticket for guild president in Makerere University Business School at a time where they introduced curfew, and I thought actually had an exception, and I continued my my door-to-door campaigns till like 11. But
I thought you had an exception.
An exception because I'm part of the system.
Okay.
I mean,
Thank you.
No, I mean when the officers, when I find
Thank you very much. Yes.
I have a card to show them.
Yeah, you say I'm in NRM. Thank you.
But I want to let you know that
Thank you very much,
that
Julia.
was the first time for me to be actually held in by the police officers. So there is actually no exception, no FDC.
They harass you, like pluck out your nails or ban your...
Mine did not get to that extreme because curfew is something of negotiations and then also paying what you should pay, like the next morning. Yeah, the fines.
Okay.
So all I'm trying to all I'm trying to bring out is we are all Ugandans, and there is no exception to the law. So if no FDC, NRM, whoever the person is really held up by police or the courts and whatever, leaders can advocate if there is need be. For example, the fact that maybe they have taken long without them maybe being tried and all. Yes, which he has done. Maybe UNSA should have done.
Okay, maybe let me ask a direct question. The motto for UNSA is "We struggle for liberation."
Yeah.
And it's a student movement.
Yeah.
Should we say if you make it to the national executive of the Uganda National Students Association, you will not fear to come out against government on some of these issues?
But Council, I've actually always been, like he said on education, I'm the same face that has been advocating for opening of schools, even when the government seems to have a different stand. So I feel like being UNSA being under the leadership of the president of Uganda does not really make it or give it an excuse really not to support the opinions and represent effectively the students.
Thank you very much. I'm going to allow each one of you about a minute to just conclude. You're free in this part maybe to give us some way forward if you wish, or if there's something you might have wanted to come out that has not, this is the part when you bring it out, or you could just thank our crew, starting with you, Yam.
Thank you, Abubaker. I was under the impression that since you allowed Ndogo, Jacob, and Harris have a lot of time exchanging, you would allow me and Julia to have a bit of time. But I have no business sounding politically correct per se, because I mean I have no constituency to please.
You attempted to run for president, you say?
Yes, the circumstances have since changed.
Yes.
And I am alive to the responsibilities of those circumstances. So those that have constituencies to please, I think, have more. No wonder they bring out that word. To reduce, because when mathematical sets was an issue in the UNSA institution, I was the president then. Now, to reduce that campaign to a mathematical set, for the lack of more modest words, even if on this panel I've been known to be modest, is I think to be shallow in analysis. Because this is a government that had promised laptop pads to students and even sanitary pads as well. And they were in a campaign where they were giving MPs 20 million each to go for consultations. What we were actually doing is to cleverly call out the government that, hey, you promised this and this, you're even giving each MP this amount of money, it totals to this, yet a mathematical set for every student who is going to be a candidate needs just this money.
Yes.
So when you juxtapose it with the one you're going to give MPs for consultations, really look at what peanuts this could be, and yet the impact they could, you know.
Yes.
So it was more of a reflection of the bigger problem of our education sector.
Okay.
I thought that Ndugaris shouldn't necessarily undermine my
Yeah,
record.
yeah.
When
Next
I
time
have
you should pay more
opportunity
attention
to,
the
yes, when I
campaign.
have opportunity to rectify it.
You
Yes.
expound on it.
Yeah. So and I didn't know Abubakar and the party you subscribe to be ones who detest modesty. I thought you were the I thought Ant was the
Well,
big
for clarity, I'm not
pusher.
here. I'm not here on behalf of Ant.
So
I'm
I am
just
worried.
moderating a conversation.
I am worried that you seem to detest some of us who you say are modest. I
Not
hope
at all.
things have
Not
not,
at all.
hope things have not flip-flopped. But my last message, and like you say that if we have anything to share with country, I was reading an article by Council Mare Mabirizi where he was comparing the similarities between Dr. Kizabesije and Honorable Chagulanyi. And after all he said, which I hope should be the culture even amongst our young, certainly difference of opinion and perceptions has loudly come out in our discussion here. It's not a bad thing. The question is, how do we handle it? That's where the challenge, and our elders are having the challenge there. Jacob put it right. There will always be difference in perceptions. But how you handle that is what is very key. That is what has failed our elders. That is where we need to put a lot of focus so that we don't become what they are becoming. So Marema has closed it this way. And I will try to be modest in some of his language. He says, after analyzing similarities, he says, fellow citizens, it does not take a politician or a civil society player to dislodge what you think is the wrong system of government. He used dictatorship. The men and women who dislodged the French monarchy in 1789 were not politicians. In Zanzibar, it took a non-citizen, Okello, a casual laborer, to dislodge a wrong system of government, in his opinion. Let each one of us concentrate on doing what is possible to overcome what we believe is the wrong system of government, as opposed to taking sides. And this is a message to young people, as opposed to taking sides with those fighting for opposition supremacy. The real opposition is the people of Uganda. The
Thank
real
you.
opposition, the real person
There is
who
struggle.
should fight for the proper governance of our country is the youth of Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't have put it in better. Harris, less than a minute.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't want to believe that Comrade Yam believes that the struggles of liberations in the countries he has mentioned were as simplistic as they seem. There is always a lot going on in the background than what is usually reported in the newspapers and in analyses by notorious counsel like Mabirizi. Now, in my concluding remarks, I want to send a message to fellow young Ugandans, especially those who think that the injustices meted against those advocating for change, the injustices that the NUP supporters face or any other opposition supporters face that don't concern them. When bills like, amendment bills to the bail right are being proposed, and you're like, oh, for me, I'm NRM. After all, I would never oppose NRM. It is always here to stay. That's being unfair to humanity. We need to be human beings first before we are NRM, before we are Ugandans, before we are any affiliation. We are humans first. And inherently in our humanity, we'd like to see fellow human beings being treated with indignity, with cruelty, in so many ways that wouldn't want us to be treated. So
5 seconds.
we might not be perfect, but I think that comrades like Jacob and others need to take a moment for introspection, to be accommodative of what it is that we are talking about in the opposition. And once we start appreciating that, well, one day I could find myself in the position where I am denied my liberty for 10 months without reason, without no protection in the law, then we will commit to a country where everyone is guaranteed such rights.
Thank you very much. Almost sounded like Niemora there. Yes, Julia.
Thank you. I just want to really implore all the youth, especially those that are actively engaged in politics. I think this has cut across the fact that we have differences. We have differences from political parties to how we actually even talk about these issues online, and so be it. But emphasis has been on the fact that we share same causes or same issues. So if we can put emphasis on using the same voices and same energy that we put in emphasizing our differences to actually push for the same cause that we have on media or wherever it is, then we will actually achieve what we aim to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like that you have not campaigned. There are many voters on this show. Yes, Jacob, you opened this conversation and now you have the honor to close it.
Thank you. You should have added, I have the honor to speak after Harris. For the first time in the show. But I want to start by thanking you and colleagues here for the engagement. All of these are my brothers and sisters. This one is my younger sister. I'm saying it clearly so that it is clear. I want to firstly start with my own disclaimer. There are things that have been alluded to in this show. Like Comrade Harris, in justifying the thinking of Jacobs, said I might look at their party as a party of hooligans. I don't. I think that there are very many brains in there. But on different occasions, as is with our party, the NRM, there are times when some people behave like hooligans. That does not mean that they are hooligans, okay? But in my final words, I want to say this. I think young people need to understand that a country is built over time. And political actors, when they take off, they don't cease. They remain, they stay the course the entirety of their life. The young person that Museveni was at university is a young person that rose up to be concerned about the status of events through FRONASA, to be concerned about the status of the country in 1980, and to now be president. And the chain has continued. Many are walking that path, whether you're looking at the leader of opposition now, the Speaker of Parliament now, or generally, the course is stayed. If you're a young political actor, never forget that you're going to be in the course for a very long time. Choose which agenda you are contributing to. A country that is solving the now question, or a country that is solving the longevity question. If you're solving the longevity question, you must answer issues of justice for all. Not justice when it is convenient for you to argue for justice for all. You must answer the question of education for all. Not education when it is convenient for your children to afford it. You must answer the final question of political participation and equality for all. Not political participation when it is convenient for you to question it. I think, in my understanding, this country has so many young people that we cannot be engaged in cherry picking. We must use our numbers to realize our call to responsibility to build a big and better country.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Mr. Akampurira. Thank you, Mr. Burobuto. This is possibly the longest youth roundtable that we've had. I want to thank you for staying with us throughout this conversation. Remember that we always say at the Youth Roundtable, we just want to awaken a spirit. We cannot exhaust the contribution of the young people, be it political, economic, or social, from independence up to date. But we try our best to put what we think are the best issues forward to incite conversations, such that through the collective, we can maybe learn and do better. I invite you to make your comments on the YouTube channel, chat space, on Twitter. I invite you to be part of these conversations. And if there are ways you think we can improve, please come through and make those comments. If you have not yet subscribed, I do not know what you're waiting for. Please subscribe to the channel and click on that notification bell such that you don't miss out. Our commitment is to always get bigger and better every passing week. Till next week, I wish you the best.